Hi mate, how are you?
Yeah, good. How's things?
All right, yeah, not too bad.
You're
Feeling quite relaxed.
You're feeling quite nice. You're looking very relaxed.
Well, I think it's, a couple of ITSECs in now. You kind of
How many
into the swing of it.
How many ITSEC?
It's my second.
Second.
How many have you done? You're going to trump me here, aren't you?
I think it's my 12th.
Okay, yeah. You definitely.
No, it's actually my 14th ITSEC.
14th.
Yeah.
And you're still coming back for more.
Yes, I'm still coming back for more. But it's nice. It's good. ITSEC is a good. It's definitely a good conference because it brings together it's not just the US market. It's like the world market comes to, isn't it?
Yeah. One of the I's is international, isn't it? So
that's probably that's the giveaway, isn't it?
Yeah, the clincher.
Yeah.
And how much have you? Has it changed much from your perspective? I bet it has.
I think over the years it has changed. There's the usual sort of like projectors and targets wandering around type stuff. But I think one of the big changes I've noticed is the kind of stuff that you guys are doing in terms of compute power. And I think that's been a really interesting thing for us as an analytics company is the shift towards your ability to process more information, increase the data you get out of a simulation. And that's I think that's one of the biggest changes I've noticed. I think everyone sort of agrees that that's the biggest change in our industry at the moment is the compute. I think.
And I think I judge things on scale quite often. Just the fact that last year our stand was this big, this year it's this big. And as we go through all of the shows that we attend almost every month, it seems sometimes. I think we feel like we've grown into our position within the sector, within the market. And that's been a really positive experience for us, albeit with relatively fewer kind of ITSECs notched on the belt. But I would agree that the requirement to drive computation to a level that allows complex data to be, fed into a simulation and then exploited out of it is where we've found the most traction from our own perspective. And so here we are, 2023.
Interesting times.
Absolutely, good. And so in those years that you've been, because we go back a long way, you and I personally, I think we've probably been trying to avoid each other, but just failed miserably. Although I did move house to try and get away from you a little bit, that still hasn't worked entirely. But I mean, other than the, as you'd said, the kind of scale of compute element, what else do you think's changed in all of that time, even going back to when we were in Batis together and all the rest of it?
I think what's quite interesting, and we'll come on to it later, but it's the way in which you can start using simulation for more means rather than just training. Or preparing people to go to war. It's about using simulation to start understanding the what ifs. To explore, because life's getting more chaotic, the world is getting more complex and
more connected.
More connected, exactly. And can you start using simulation to start looking at those what ifs and start helping you make decisions about things around what equipment do you buy, how do you train people, what type of people do you need in the future, that kind of stuff. I think that has been, since we've known each other, that's something that's definitely evolved. I think part of it is technology driven, I think. But that it's a cultural thing as well. How do you start using information to help you make better decisions and start using the tools that are available? Certain customers, as we know, are culturally more open to that. And for them, it's a big challenge to start shifting the way in which they start designing stuff.
And I think and again, if I go back to the stuff that we did in Batis all those years ago with, dare I mention, the Strike Brigade concept.
Yes.
But it was epitomised by the need to drive objective data into probably the more human subjective process of decision making. And I think there's a correlation that you could draw directly from the stuff that we were doing there. A lot of the stuff that you've then continued to do through experimentation and innovation, all the way through to the stuff that we then started doing together last year or year before with DASA and Army Futures, and creating data, exploitable data out of data chaos, if you like, such that a commander can then use that at the speed of relevance to actually start making informed decisions. I think that's quite exciting. I know that from, when we've all been sat on a bun line, cold and wet, deciding whether to go left flanking, right flanking, or straight down the middle, having a little nugget of data to support, the feel of the right decision.
What's that expression? The Fingerspitzel?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
How you feel it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's. I mean, I would. It's been a really interesting journey for me because we've done all of those things, and then to still be here now talking about, I suppose, thematically similar things, but technologically things that have advanced really quite rapidly in the time that we're talking about. So that's quite cool. I certainly think, anyway.
Another thing I think that has changed, I think maybe in the last 5 years, is this thing around partnerships. And I'm not one of these people who say that SMEs can do everything. I think it's this understanding that the primes have a role to play as an integrator, as providing the logistics, the wrap that allows the SMEs to do what they do, which is real bespoke brilliance in what they do, but they're not, they haven't got the staying power to do like a major program. So I think that's changed, and it's about finding companies that the relationship is a good working relationship, but also the value proposition that you provide. It's 1 and 1 equals 5. Not
yeah. I think what organisations like ours are very good at understanding what they do and what they don't do. And that makes building those partnerships really easy, because you can just it's a pretty straightforward jigsaw to put together. And I think that's the strength of what we bring. And I think sometimes it's a bit more challenging to work out how those plugs and sockets work with, a kind of vast, enormous organisation. And so that perhaps is a bit more of a challenge. But for us, there's a definite dependency on both models, because we are, as an enabling technology, we rely on primarily a business-to-business approach, and therefore we need to find the right place to kind of dock into the larger organisation to create those value propositions and to generate value and benefit. But I think the power of combinations is then also quite a useful thing to take into that type of scenario, but also into the types of scenarios that we've already done together with DASA and DSTL and Army Futures, where you bring a particular capability that we've already brought together and forged, dare I say. I thought I'd drop that one in there. And it has an immediate value, but it can run at pace.
What do you, as we're both SMEs, but for you, what does a good relationship look like? What defines in your mind a good business relationship?
I think there's some fundamentals, shared purpose, the technological fit, but I think we're all, ultimately we're all human beings, and there has to be a human element to that, because that's the thing that will enable you to overcome challenges, whether it's with technology or whether it's with the market or customers, and the frictions that creates. And I think if you don't have that element at the very human level, then all the rest of it becomes even more challenging. And so I think, you're going to tell me otherwise now, because we're obviously very difficult to work with, but no. Do you agree?
Incredible pricing. No, I think working in SME is, it's not just a job. It's like, when you run your own company, or
you're kind of living it.
You're in it.
And
life's too short to work with people you don't like working with. So there's definitely a human part to that. But I think the shared purpose bit is really important. I think being ex-military,
selection and maintenance of the aim.
Well, but also it's about the boys and girls who are on the front line. It's about making sure that they're safe. Still, I think people in the defence industry have that shared goal, which is why I stay in the defence industry. I think that there's a sort of second question to that, which is obviously relationships between different companies, but the relationship between us and our customers is slightly changing, I think, as well. I think we're seeing different customers they're being more open to having more direct conversations about what the problems are. more direct conversations about, they admitting they don't know the answer and coming to industry for recommendations, suggestions, and working in partnership with them to try and solve the problems, because there's so many problems nowadays. It's not just one. It's
do you think that's born of either or perhaps both, a change in culture from a procurement perspective, or just sheer necessity, because there is now such a vast myriad of options technologically to bring to bear, and you almost need an SME to be able to join the dots, because it moves too quickly, it's too complicated, they don't have the capacity.
There's a lot to unpack in that question, I think.
Sorry,
I personally don't think the procurement system has changed at all in the time we've been when we were serving and we've been in industry. I don't think it's changed. I think it's because of necessity. I think life has got too complicated. It's not just one problem, as I was saying before. It's multifaceted, all directions, depth, breadth. So they're looking more widely for help. I think
there's a good parallel there with the data challenges that we are solving with Forge and other work, because if you draw the comparison, you've also got a world where live legacy, just data on data is creating a complexity all of its own, never mind the complexity that is inherent within the data itself, particularly within a kind of complex training or decision support scenario. So there's probably quite an interesting parallel from a procurement complexity perspective, along with a data complexity.
Well, that's a good segue into Forge, isn't it? Talking about Forge. Why did we come up with the Forge concept?
Well, to do exactly that.
Yeah.
To draw simplicity out of complex data chaos. So, a few years ago, we worked together on VRLT, which I think was when Hive.
You might have to explain what VRLT is.
Virtual reality in land training pilot.
Yes.
For me in a previous life, but I think I'm right in saying it's when Hive started to come into the Cervus kind of portfolio.
I think it was when we started using Hive as a black box that you could plug into training to then extract the data and do the analysis in real time.
How has that evolved into Forge as we know it now?
I think it was the realization that that everyone's talking about big data and all that kind of stuff, but actually you need the results instantaneously.
Yeah.
So when you're deployed into a tank park, like Kenya or in the Salisbury Plain, you want the after-action analysis to happen in real time. So you need to do the analysis. So that made us realize that there's a real need for that real-time processing.
Yeah.
But I think the kind of genesis of Forge was kind of realizing that in the same way in training you need the results instantaneously to make an informed decision about how well someone's performed in training.
Yeah.
The Forge is about actually how can you start informing people's decisions about procurement or capability development, because you can't wait 6 months to get the results. You need to sort of sit there and do it, and within days, not months, start coming up with some answers that people can start working on to then understand what changes, what levers they're pulling to make a change to the capability.
And where the dependencies are as well.
Exactly. So that was actually it's probably quite a good analogy for understanding where the Forge came from, which was that everyone's talking about big data, they're talking about understanding stuff now, but it's about actually giving that information in the hand within minutes, not weeks, months, years.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think what's been really exciting for us has been enabling that evolution to take place at the pace that we wanted to move it forward, and being able to, you've already mentioned the scale of compute and the kind of computation challenge, but also Hadean's ability, or the platform's ability, to run parallel iterations of complex scenarios at beyond real time, so that you can then, and we mentioned earlier the kind of speed of relevance, get that data to a point that it can be in the hands of a decision maker when they need it.
Yep.
to inform the decision that they then need to make, whether it's procurement or sort of kind of concept development type approach, which I think was more what we were doing with Army Futures a year or so ago, into now where I think certainly we're at the kind of bleeding edge of a capability that then can inform decision makers in real time. So where it's touching into wargaming, color analysis, operational analysis, so that you can then potentially, I'd love nothing more than you mentioned, the men and women that we still support on the front line, if you like, but being able to put a capability like that in the hands of a tactical or operational decision maker, I think would make a dramatic change and benefit when it comes to actually kind of boots on the ground.
Yeah, and I think people talk about information advantage, don't they? They use that
and decision advantage
buzzword. But we are talking. That's exactly what we're talking about. But I think people use the user case of being in a command and control system that can make decisions for you, so you make a better decision than your enemy.
Yeah.
Actually, what we're talking about is making a better decision about what equipment you buy or what organization you build, which is longer term, but it's still a really important decision to make.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And that decision cycle, historically has been years. We need to start making those decisions in big changes, I think. And making better decisions on those micro changes, I think, is...
And it's just dawned on me. I mean, it's probably a very simple thought, but of course, a capability like that, moving at that speed, should also therefore be able to keep up with this speed of technological advancement in the marketplace.
Yes.
So actually, you're not making a decision about a capability tweak or an adjustment that actually technology has rendered obsolete because it's moved on. So actually being able to then link all of that into what we've already talked about in terms of trying to inject a bit of agility into procurement processes, but that's only relevant really if you're making the right decision at the right time about what it is that you want to go and buy.
And I think it's that cultural. That's the problem that we face is as providers of technology, providers of change. Is that the organisations that we serve, the culture hasn't got their heads around the fact that they need to change the procurement process, which still relies on buying ships, tanks, and aircraft, which take 20 years. You need to be buying
capital investment, and
you're making software changes like that because it gives you that advantage.
Almost as often as your iPhone updates.
Exactly. And I think that's a cultural issue that most of our customers face at the moment. And it's not a technology problem; it's a cultural problem.
So I think we've done a bit of the past. As far back as we're willing to go, and the present I think is pretty clear in what we're doing with Forge and how that's going forward. So what do you think the future looks like in terms of some of the themes that we've talked about this morning?
I think there's going to be a continual acceleration in the compute power aspects, which is going to be an unlocking thing that allows an analytics company like us to get more data. That's what we're data thirsty, and we haven't got data enough to start training some of our. Everyone's talking about machine learning and AI and all that. It requires data to do that. So I think that increase in compute power is going to continue, and that's a fact. That's not going to change. I hope that people's attitude to data is going to change. I think we're going to see a greater trust in more objective reasoning rather than subjective reasoning. I hope. I think that's got to come, and I think people are going to have to make better decisions faster as the world gets more complicated. And the understanding of and the trust in the data that they're using to make those decisions. I think people are going to have to get more data savvy and ask those questions about what's the validity of this data I'm making this judgment on. So I think that's going to be a slightly seismic shift, and I do sense it's coming. We're sitting in this world right now, and we think it's going at snail's pace. But I do feel it's coming, and things like Chat GPT. No one understood what AI was, and now they're using it to write their essays. So there's a bit of a shift there. But that's what I think in terms of as a data company. But what do you think is going to be a big?
Well, firstly, I agree with everything you've just said, and I think that there is. I would wholeheartedly agree that the the kind of cultural and trust element of these technologies as they advance at the speed that they're advancing is going to be critical, and also data security. So linked to that ability to trust data that's being put into a process by which you might want to then make quite a critical decision. We have to be able to trust the data, that it is accurate, but it's also not been tampered with or compromised by forces that we might wish to kind of protect it from. So I think it's tied into that kind of cultural security trust element. But ultimately, I think the reality of all of it and everything that you've just said kind of cries out to me that this is going to continue to be a data scale challenge. With tick, trust, verified, validated, it's still going to be a lot of data. And it's going to be a lot of data coming from multiple sources. Like I said at the start, some coming from legacy systems, some coming from 30 years of synthetics training data that can now be exploited in a more meaningful way. Some of it coming from live data, coming from sources on the internet and other injects that you would wish to cohere into that kind of central complexity to give the scenario the depth that you want it to. All of this is a data challenge, and I think being able to use a platform to cohere that data centrally, create a kind of single view of all of that data in a synchronized and coherent way, then we think and hope would then enable data thirsty guys like you to then take a coherent big kind of lake of data and package it back up for a consumer to then use to whatever they need to use it for, whether it's decision making or whatever. So I think that's where we feel this is going next, and being able to plug all of that AI and language models and the raw data and everything else is really at the heart of taking that forward.